Yeah, we talked about it a lot, and we've done everything we can. And you know, I'm a big client of this subject because in the past I did some cinematographic studies, so I exactly know what you're talking about. Like for example, how the aperture, you say? Aperture informs the depth of fields, these sort of things, and. We tried, but we had some sort of technical limitation at this stage and other stuff to do. We thought that we were good enough with what we have right now. Maybe in the future we will make it even better. Because you know, if we go in this field, we could even emulate some cameras which behave differently than others, or how argentic would behave compared to numeric, extra. So yeah, I believe we have everything to do it. It's just that it took too much time at the moment to do it right now. But we will see. Maybe one day we will gonna make an update with a even deeper camera system. It's actually a pretty vast subject, even if it sounds like simple. It's actually because, okay, try to summarize. First, it was interesting to respect what happened in real life when you are doing a flight. It's a natural part of the procedure. You don't jump into a plane like you jump into a car. So in terms of realism, even in a pure experiential side of things, it was interesting. And there is also mistake that you can do when you are doing this, because as I was explaining, you can forget to remove something and you will gonna be in trouble. Actually myself, I've already seen a plane in France landing with the pitot cover on. So you're like, this guy don't know what is his speed, so he's probably good at it, but he probably land and like, I hope nobody sees me, you know. So you can do it in the game. There is another thing which is much more experiential, but I love a lot, is the sense of scale of the actual planes themselves. In 2020, you were never really understanding for real what is the size of the plane you were piloting, because we put the camera at the optimal place each time, but because of this, you don't really get it. And doing these pre-flights, you actually understand that the difference between a Cessna 172 and, for example, just Twin Otter, those two birds are really different. It's not at all the same plane. And doing this pre-flight, you actually have a sense of this much better. You understand much better what is the beast you are gonna use. And all those little details also you can observe. The different doors you can open to see the engine. You know, it was also a good way. You can now in some planes open, or helicopters, actually open the access to the motor and see how it's done. It gives more weight and more realism to the plane itself. So it's another answer. But obviously what comes with this is like how far we can walk. And it's true that with some environment we have now, you're like, it would be so cool to actually do a trek in this game. So right now we don't know yet at the moment exactly how far we will gonna open the door with this. Right now, I think in the build you guys place, we have limited the diamond. I mean, there is a radius basically where you cannot go that far. I mean, farther than I think it's 100 meters right now in this build from the plane, because it can cause problem. But honestly, in my opinion, at the moment, I'm like, yeah, there is problems or bugs or things that player will gonna like to do and which is not yet available, but there is so much fun to actually completely open it that I think it's what we're gonna do. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the future, not in this game, but it may be another type of experience that maybe one day we're gonna do. Of course, we can see that the planet has tons of potential, even if we put a plane on the side. Yeah, so we'll see what we're gonna do with this. But it's clearly a sort of yeah, the walking thing teases lots of other ideas and stuff we could do. Yeah.
Okay. So.
By the way, if I can add, you are. It's too much.
Okay.
It's just that in Kitty Hawk and in any flight simulator before, you were the plane.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The plane.
You were the plane. And it sounds like a detail, but on a technological standpoint now, you are really the pilot. Which basically means that the plane and the pilot are two different things for real. And so the structure, the way we have approached these technical things tells you a lot about what we will going to be able to do in the future, maybe. As mentioned, you can already do it. You know, I don't know if you noticed, but if you land with an helicopter on the Grand Canyon and you open the door, it's not only during the pre-flight.
Oh, okay.
You didn't experience this yet, but you can try. You can land in the Grand Canyon, open the door, and you will gonna be instantly outside. It's already working, this. For the rest, I think today we are talking about flights in 2024, and I will not go further than this. We wanted to do something like this even before the launch of 2020. But so many other things to do that we had to, do things in the correct, step by step and best step first. But when we released 2020, we did with Microsoft several surveys in order to understand what the players were enjoying extra or not. And one of the main feedback, which was all across the board, from super hardcore simmers to gamers to what we call digital tourists, which is even people who are not used to even sometimes play video games, was we want more goals and more purpose. It was the main feedback, before anything else. So, number one thing. So, based on that, we're like, we need to do something. Because we wanted to do it, and now we have more time to do it for real. So that was the starting point. And then, I'll try to keep it short on the other game mode, but it's important that I talk about this. It's the issue is that you cannot give the same goal to everyone, because obviously an hardcore simmer is able to do things that a very casual or even digital tourist cannot do. So that's the reason why we came with those like world photographer mode, challenge mode. And sometimes, even you and me, we are not the same guy. Even we don't eat the same dish every day. You can be the guy one day who wants to chill and just take picture of giraffe. It's actually pretty cool in the game, or try to be at the top of the leaderboard. Giuseppe.
I will get you.
Or
I'm a record now.
And all of that basically helps people to, and that's the reason why I'm talking about this, helps people to be, it's an entry point to learn step by step how the sim actually works, because it's a very specific type of experience. There is, for example, if you think about it, there is not that many games where you can change the time of the day or the weather. There is not that many. So it's a concept you need to understand. And all these different tools, different ways of using the soft are actually introduced baby step by by those game modes. But there is more complicated things that to understand it, to actually be a pilot, that you cannot really learn by yourself. You need to be taught a little bit. And what we have observed is that in 2020 we had tons of tutorials already, not as much as we have today because we have added a lot. But we had already had a lot. But who starts an experience these days by doing 50 tutorials, and it doesn't exist. Nobody wants to do this. What we like and what we have tried to do, and I think it's what you have started to feel, is the fact that the career gives a natural flow to this, and that you feel that you are building something. It's not that. You're building your career, you're building your skills. And if you're an hardcore, by the way, you are going to be able to skip most of the training because you already know what you're talking about. and until the point where actually I'm not that good at IFR, for example, and so I need to be trained before I can pretend to pass the exam. But if you are not familiar at all, we will need to teach you how to land a plane, because landing a plane is not at the moment where you land that it works. It's basically 3 minutes before. It's which altitude, if my altitude is perfect, if my RPM is perfect, my speed is perfect, and the configuration of the plane is perfect, actually landing is pretty easy. It's just a procedure, you know, it's a process. It's better to be taught this instead of learning by yourself, you know. So this, but because you pass an exam, and that you have, by the way, to pay for the exam, which basically means that if you miss, you will have to pay again in the career. It's cool because, you know, your mindset is different in this case. You want to be successful, so your mindset to understand what you're doing and to learn what you're doing and to apply perfectly what you've learned during the exam is much better. And all of those little tiny details makes people embrace the training completely differently than what it was before, when we had no purpose and it was not embedded into a much natural flow as we are trying to do right now. Yes and no. We will typically, I mean, after the previous step, which are typical PPL, CPL, turboprop, IFR, these sort of things, obviously, first to start with, is not as hard as it is in real life. We don't even pretend it to be, you know, because you cannot catch up with something which in real life would take you several years. It's not a good idea on the design perspective, I think. So that's the reason why, I mean, that said, we always try to keep the spirit of it and to keep the main conceptual brick of it, in order to really be sure that the player gets what is important to understand for a given type of exam. For example, I don't know. So the example I was giving is how to land a plane and basically prepare your landing is a brick. But for a tail dragger, for example, the way you land is different. You know, you cannot land if the tail touch first, you're screwed. Extra. So the way you have to counter with the rudder, this type of plane is very important and needs to be learned also. So it's not as... Probably in the game it's much faster than what you would do in real life, but at least you will get what is at stake, what is the spirit of it, etc. And it goes on and on until IFR sort of things. But after that, there is no way we can catch up with something which in real life you need to have done really long studies, dedicated to it, you know, not 5 days a week during several years. No, there is no way we can go as deep as this in the sim. And yes, for sure, if you want to really apply at the same level of complexity than real life actually interacting with the plane, as you can do in the game, yeah, you will gonna have at some point to learn by yourself. But again, it's where I believe the beauty of the community enter into the play is like there is so many great tutorials talking about this, explain you how to interact, how this very specific avionic actually works. That at some point, if you have reached this level, I think there is no issue that you will gonna look at YouTube to actually understand how the avionic works. You know, you are already in the sim since so much at this stage, and you are already so happy with it that I believe it was not the right place to invest to help people to reach this point. Let's take, for example, let's take a mission where you would have to transport someone who broke his leg during a ski session, and you need to bring him back to let's say it happens in Courchevel in the Alps, and you need to take him back to Lyon in France because there is a good hospital in Lyon. if you are a beginner and if you are at least comfortable with flying because in this case it would gonna be the Grand Caravan, the medevac version of the Grand Caravan, which is a turboprop, so it's not the easiest plane, but let's pretend you are good enough to fly the Grand Caravan. And honestly, I'm not pretending that I'm a specialist, I think you will gonna reach this level pretty fast. That said, personally, I'm not yet fully comfortable with preparing my pre-flight thing and really edit every single navigation point in order to reach the Lyon airport. So the delta here is like, let's take the super hardcore. He will start like cold and dark with no assistance at all, no visual assistance, no flight model assistance at all. And he will basically be in the cockpit and switch after switch, have to do the startup procedure. And he will gonna have prepared on his electronic flight bag the flight pass he would gonna do. And he will export this flight plan into the avionic, set the correct first rally point he needs to reach, taking off with no visual information on screen, no UI on screen, and really looks at the avionics and the GPS to actually follow each of those rally points, and then contact ATC at the starting point and at the destination airport at the appropriate moment where he needs to, without any assistance. On the other side of the spectrum, if you don't even understand what I'm talking about, what you will gonna do is that you will keep the UI displayed, for example, during the flights. So first you can skip so there is two ways. You can either skip the moment of the flight which are not mandatory in the mission. So basically the startup procedure is not mandatory. You can do it if you want, or you can simplify it by because it's cool to have the feeling that you did it, So there is a sort of shortcut you probably tried where you can basically with one button start up the whole plane, but you feel like you did it, like vroom, which is cool. And then if you are bored with you do not have enough time to do it, you can skip the taxi procedure. So taxiing, because it can be pretty long on big airport, so not really in this case in Courchevel it's quite short, but let's pretend. So you can skip the taxi procedure and be basically in front of the runway ready to take off. In between, it's the same thing. We have added this single button thing where you can communicate with the ATC with what is expected by the pilot to say. But if you want to do it manually, you can do it manually. You will open the ATC communication panel and you will select the message you want to tell to the ATC. For example, if you didn't get it, like I didn't understood, I was doing something else. I didn't understood which runway the ATC wants me to take off on. You can ask, can you repeat? Those things is part of the hardcore thing, but if you want to just move forward but start to understand how it works, okay, I contact the ATC. I need to wait the ATC to enter into the runway, so you wait. But you just push one button. And then you take off. And if you want to have the flight pass that tells you which rally point by default, because in this case you didn't add even to do the flight pass. The game proposed a default flight pass, which is realistic and which works, including the way you will integrate the destination airport in which, depending of your arrival position. Exactly. All of that will be basically calculated for you, and it will gonna be displayed in order to let you actually do it, even if you have no idea of why it's working like this. And then you will follow the pass and land on the airport and go to the parking point, and you're done. And so I think you can really do the exact same mission with the level you have from very rookie. In this case, you need to be able to fly a plane. But as soon as you can do it, I think you can really do it like I've just explained, like following the path. And by the way, it doesn't mean that it's easy necessarily, because when you, for example, you need to do a tour around, you do a tour, like a flight seeing thing, and you want to do, for example, you want to look around the Grand Canyon, and so you have tourists in the seats behind you. You need the people to enjoy it. So you want this to be at the correct altitude, but the correct speed, not too far, not too close, in order to let them be able to observe the thing you are filming. you will see actually keep the same altitude, the correct speed, arrive at the correct altitude, correct speed, and correct distance. It's actually a thing without doing too many moves, because the end is like, oh, what happened behind, and your score will gonna be lower. You can still do this with all the flight information, UI information that will helps you to understand where you need to go. But still, there is skills involved in this. So I think you get the picture.